If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 7 minutes. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. This time-stamped email proves that this prediction that Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025 has been known since November 9th. We can see here the timestamp November 9th, 2024. On November 8th, 2024, we received the relevant prophetic signs related to Paul Simon. And as I wrote right here, God was pointing to November 8th ahead of time because Simon's death will point to Revelation chapter 8, verse 1. And this is the reason why Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. In short, the date 8:1 and 11:8 hint at Revelation 8:1 in the Bible, which describes a period of silence that was observed in heaven. Paul Simon's first hit was Sound of Silence. As I wrote right here, it is exactly 38 weeks between November 8th and August 1st, 2025, and Paul Simon is predicted to die at the age of 83, for which 38 weeks hints at. A dirty bomb is a conventional explosive that uses radioactive material. I am predicting that 3 dirty bombs will explode in New York City, in Times Square, Penn Station, and Grand Central Station. There will then be a massive evacuation from Manhattan Island. I am predicting that these 3 dirty bombs will explode on either August 30th or September 4th. I am also predicting that a dirty bomb will explode in the port of Los Angeles on September 4th. I am predicting that Tehran, Iran, will be nuked by the US or possibly Israel on September 7th, 2025. This will obviously be in response to the dirty bombs that are predicted to explode in New York City. I am predicting that Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom will die in a plane crash in St. Louis as they are traveling from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles in Busch Stadium in St. Louis on August 2nd, 2028. This will be during the predicted presidential campaign of Gavin Newsom. As a result of Gavin Newsom's death, Michelle Obama will become the Democrat Party's presidential nomination. Michelle Obama will, quote unquote, win the election over J.D. Vance on November 7th, 2028, and will become the president on January 20th, 2029. Donald Trump is predicted to run as J.D. Vance's vice president. This scheme to overcome the 22nd Amendment will backfire and inspire Michelle Obama and Barack Obama to run on the ticket with Barack Obama as Michelle Obama's vice president. She will then step down and Barack Obama will become the president again. It is predicted that there will be a massive Mary apparition on the beach in Rio, Brazil on April 24th, 2029. It is now recognized that there will be 2 massive Mary apparitions on the beach in Rio. The first of the 2 is predicted to be on March 22nd, 2029. These predicted Mary apparitions will not be secretive. They will be mainstream, worldwide news. Like all Mary apparitions in history, including at Lourdes, Guadalupe, and Fatima, this Mary apparition will be a demon pretending to be Mary. It is predicted that on April 26th, 2029, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to the fifth trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens. The demons pretending to be aliens will claim to be here to help us with our nuclear weapons. It is predicted that Pope Francis will be resurrected from the grave on April 26th, 2029. And it is possible that on this day, Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist and 5G frequencies. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. The resurrection rapture event will occur on Pentecost on May 27th, 2029. On September 11th, 2029, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit of Earth in the Indian Ocean. The greatest seismic effect of this will be felt on the other side of the globe, which is North America, and this will trigger an eruption of Yellowstone volcano and will cause the volcano in the Canary Islands to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean and send a mega tsunami towards the East Coast. It will also trigger the collapse of the Hoover Dam, which will cause a water panic in California, and many other devastating earthquakes. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, Judgment Day, will be at the end of 2031. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. All right, welcome. This video is predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on August 1st. The date that this video is posted proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email. Right here, it doesn't show the date because I composed this email today. However, we can see it right here. Today is July 21st. All right? Today was the day of the death of the actor Malcolm Jamal Warner, who played Bill Cosby's son in The Cosby Show. That's the prophetic sign I'll be explaining. All right? And the reasoning for how I know that Paul Simon will die on August 1st and how I know it is ahead of time, how I know this ahead of time is because of the reasoning, which, as I will explain, will be clearly from God and not possibly from the imagination of a human being. Right? No one is creative enough to concoct the reasoning that I'll be explaining. All right? And that will prove that this prediction is being made ahead of time. Now, the irrational agnostic atheist, and all agnostic atheists are irrational, but and so that's their nature. And so they will say that, well, I must have created a video for every day of the year, finally hoping to get lucky. That would be a crazy person that would do that, but the truth is that they are the crazy person. Whether they, need clinical mental assistance, that's not what I mean, but their level of irrationality when it comes to God is through the roof, and so that's actually what they will say. Now, this isn't the only video. There are, hundreds would be an exaggeration, but there's probably 100 different ways that are so profound and equally as profound as this for how I know that Paul Simon it's probably more than 100 when you think of all of the Paul Simon's signs in totality, which has been going on for years now, and it'll finally come to a climax with his death. God has been pointing to this. It is so significant. You need to watch all of the Paul Simon videos to appreciate how significant the death of Paul Simon is, or will be. It will be a massive warning. And God has used so many things involving Paul Simon, and including especially his music. Okay, now that's all explained. I'll touch on some of it, I'm sure, in this video, but watch all of the videos. Of course, the wise person will recognize when the prediction comes to pass that they need to watch every single minute of every video on this channel. And I do not know what in the world you are thinking if you do not watch every minute of every video on this channel after the prediction comes to pass. It would be, what would be a nice metaphor? Forgive me, Catholics, but it'd be like the Catholic who claims to be a believer in Jesus and that Jesus is God, but has no interest at all in reading what this man said. God came to earth as a man and spoke, but they have no interest in learning what he actually said. And it's not just only the case for Catholics. There are other, of course, Christians in other denominations that are the same way. They go to church as more of a superstition than anything. They're not really interested in Jesus and what he had to say. But that would be like that. It'd be like, okay, so you hear about this interesting prediction, and what are your reaction is, oh, cool. This guy was able to know this ahead of time. Well, let me expand on that. That is not the purpose of this prediction that is from God. It is not for you to say, oh, cool, neat. God told you that this was going to happen ahead of time. No, that is not the reason for this prediction. That is from God. And I know far better than anyone the reason and purpose for this prediction. The reason and purpose for this prediction is to prove the controversial things that I am saying. It is to prove the analysis that I'll be giving in a second. But more importantly, to prove the controversial things that I'll be saying in these videos. Whether or not I talk about something very controversial in this video or not, that will be the case for the reasoning for the prediction. So this video will be about how it is that the Cosby Show connects to the death of Paul Simon. It's very interesting. Let me read what I wrote. On July 21st, 2025, the actor who played Bill Cosby's only son on The Cosby Show, Malcolm Jamal Warner, died from drowning in a rip current off the coast of Costa Rica. Warner died 8 days after Cosby's 88th birthday. The Cosby Show famously ran for 8 seasons. Incidentally, Paul Simon is predicted to die on the first day of the 8th month because it will point to the first verse of the 8th chapter of the book of Revelation, in which a period of silence was observed in heaven, and that's why Simon's first biggest hit, Sound of Silence. So what I failed to mention here, I realize now, is that all of this is actually hinting at the 8th chapter of the book of Revelation, and Paul Simon's death will point to that, which is why, as I will explain, the death of Warner connects to the predicted death of Paul Simon. But this 8 days after Cosby's 88th birthday and the Cosby Show having famously ran for 8 seasons also hints at 888, which is the numeric value of the name Jesus in Greek gematria. Greek letters are also numbers, just like Roman letters. All right? And so God uses this in his signs, 888. There are other profound reasons for the number 8 in itself, but that's not related to what we want to talk about in this video. So let's move on. The Cosby Show was most known for symbolizing wholesome family values. Think about it. If you lived during the time of the Cosby Show, you know this to be the truth. That's what the overarching, theme, the reason why the Cosby Show was so popular for so long is because it connected with this idealistic not so idealistic as in like Little House on the Prairie idealistic, but it connected with the stream of sentiment in the culture that desired this wholesome family values that weren't necessarily being played out in real life at the time, because in the 80s, which is when this show ran, was the real decay of wholesome values. In fact, family values, the term family values, was birthed in the 1980s. The reason for that, I'll just get off onto a tangent here, but there is a theory, which I believe is true, that social history is cyclical, and it runs in seasons: summer, fall, winter, and spring. And every summer is a season of a baby boomer generation that was birthed after the prior winter, during the spring season, when things were in a season of conformity. This season rebels against the establishment and the parent generation, which are elders during the summer season. They are the generation that fought and won the winter season. And anyway, there's a rebellion against the established culture by the young adults in the summer season. And the summer is, of course, like a season metaphorically of bright colors and, flowers, which is why flower power, for example, and why the bright clothing of the 60s and 70s and bell bottoms and big collars. The fashion reflected a summer season, a flourishing of culture. Today, we are still presently living in the culture that was birthed in the 60s and 70s. And that culture lasts for an entire cycle until the next summer, when the culture will be rebelled against again. Now, that won't be actually happening in this case, because the end of the age is happening with the return of Lord Jesus Christ, and that will arguably bring in the spring season. So, anyway. So, the young generation, the young adults, I should say, in the summer rebel, and then by the autumn season, they are parents. And they are beginning to have the Gen X generation. The nomad, the archetypal name is the nomad generation. They are the generation that is the laissez-faire generation. The Generation X is known for not being raised by parents, for having raised themselves, because they are what's also called the latchkey kid generation. They wore the key on their neck to school and then opened the door to their home with no one home when they got home. The exact opposite of the kids that the Generation X is having today, because it's the cycle, and that's how it's a pendulum swinging from one extreme to the other. So the generation that wasn't raised by parents is the overprotective generation, and that's what's currently being raised today. I know this because I have a sister that, for example, is part of that generation that is raising kids that are extremely, extremely supervised every minute of their days, chock-filled with planning, nonstop. They have no time. Every single minute of that kid's life is planned with some extracurricular activity, some sport or something. And so that's the opposite. Anyway, so because of that, we have what I'm getting at here is the breakdown of the family, because the summer season was the season of adult lifestyle of choice. The young adults chose to do what they wanted to do. They didn't have any respect. They lost Christianity, furthermore. So it wasn't a summer season like in prior summer seasons, which was a religious awakening. This particular summer season was known as the consciousness revolution. It was the Indian religion replacing Christianity as a whole, which is why it birthed the New Age movement and baby boomers going to India like the Beatles, etc. So they completely did away with Christianity and all the traditional values, and they also did away with the idea of family in many ways. Some of them obviously did raise families, but like I said, it was not like the families that are being raised today. And that's why the stickers and the signs on minivans in the 80s and 90s, baby on board, and the family values, because in the midst of all that, there was a counter-revolution, a reaction from the conservative segment of the culture that rebelled against the rebellion. Okay, so anyway, the term family values didn't exist before the Cosby era. And so the Cosby Show symbolizes all of this. And in other words, it symbolizes the breaking down of the family and the ultimate destruction of society, which is why we are where we are at today, the end of the road for American and Western civilization. Because essentially, at the root, the breakdown of the family and family values. In other words, the hyper excessiveness of sexuality in the culture, the sexualization of the culture, the promiscuity, the doing away with slut shaming, etc. Feminism, all of that is a result of the breakdown of the family, the disrespect for fatherhood and feminism, etc. Right? So that's where we're at, the end of the road, and the Cosby Show symbolizes this. And what I'm saying is that judgment is now coming, the destruction of God from God is now coming upon America, and it didn't start with the Cosby Show or the 1980s, but this is symbolic of it. Okay, there was a big moment in the decay of American culture because of all of what I just described. Now, this is also the reason, the symbolism for the Cosby Show being symbolic of wholesome family values is exactly the reason, prophetic reason why the stark contrast with Bill Cosby's real life sexual crimes. I mean, think about that. What a coincidence. It wasn't a coincidence. It was designed by God. How could it be that Bill Cosby's real life was a horrific, nightmarish, exact opposite? Because again, the breakdown of the family is due to the sexualization of the culture. And so Bill Cosby, what is he guilty of? These sexual crimes. And people were in shock because this was the guy that symbolized the exact opposite of that. Well, that's all designed by God. How could it be that the guy that the guy that symbolized fatherhood and wholesome family values was the guy that was guilty of the exact opposite? It's because it's a prophetic sign. These coincidences aren't coincidences. If you look around, the world is filled with them, and they are from God. God is trying to speak to you, to everyone. So, on the day of Warner's death, Cosby's statement on the day of Warner's death is that it hit him as hard as learning that his son died when he was murdered in a failed robbery attempt. His son and Warner played together as kids. This connection to a murder is also representative of sin and death from society, and the death of society, which has lost, because it has lost its morality and family values through the sexualization of the culture and feminism and women being taught that they have the same libido and sex drive as men, and the doing away with slut shaming, and which is of course what's behind not having sex before marriage, and the whole putting on the family and marriage on a pedestal that was ripped apart by the egoistic, narcissistic baby boomer generation because they had done away with Christianity and focused on themselves, which led to Generation X and all the problems of the 80s and 90s, and the inner city problems and the crime in the inner cities that was caused by Generation X kids in the inner cities, etc. That was all the result of the baby boomers and their narcissistic, arrogant dismissal of anything traditional. Okay. And hell is going to be paid on America now. And believe me, the baby boomer generation will not pass away from the scene before the end times and the arrival of Lord Jesus Christ. The judgment that is coming will not miss the baby boomer generation. The baby boomer generation, which is about to leave the stage, will not leave the stage before this happens. And that's one way you can be sure that Lord Jesus Christ will return soon. But there's far more reason for knowing that than that. Even the Bible in prophecy reveals the timing of the Lord. But think about it. The generation that is most responsible for the decay of America will not pass away from the scene without the judgment coming. I mean, you could look at it this way too. God is focused on the baby boomer generation. I mean, he used the baby boomer generation for so much in the development of where we are at today, because God uses evil for his purposes, right? And so he used the baby boomer generation, and they are not going to pass away from the scene before the judgment comes upon them. No. And Bill Cosby is a baby boomer. Well, is he? He might not technically, but he does symbolize it. He might be just a few years, just like a couple of years, let's see, 88. Yeah, he's technically not a baby boomer, but that's irrelevant. He was a figure looked up to by the baby boomer generation. He was a parent during the beginning of the baby boomer parent period of being parents. That's the Cosby Show. The Cosby Show was about baby boomer times baby boomers being parents. All right? Yeah. So again, that's a reason why we know that the judgment and destruction of America will not come after the baby boomer generation has passed away from the scene. Anyone who's thinking otherwise, really think about it. Like, if you actually think it's possible that the baby boomer generation will not be around to witness the destruction and the judgment, come on, really think about it a second time. We can know the doctrine of imminence is false, is a heretical doctrine from Satan. All right? It contradicts so many passages in the Bible. And Jesus, for example, even said in Revelation 3:3, watch, for otherwise, therefore, you will not know at the hour which I will come. And therefore, if we are watching, we will know the hour he is coming. You can't explain that away. I mean, the doctrine of imminence, the most repeated, quoted verse in the Bible, no one knows the day, is mistranslated and taken out of context. I'm not going to get into it again in this video right here. I will explain all that I need to explain in the must-watch. I forget what I'm going to title it. The prophetic, the reasons for how I know. Well, anyway, you'll see. I'll be promoting the video more and probably putting the link in the video's description boxes. Okay, so the reasons for the predictions, in other words. Well, let me continue on here. So Adam Sandler, his first acting role was on The Cosby Show. Sandler's new movie, Happy Gilmore 2, will be released 4 days after Warner's death. The movie is about golf. The word golf has 4 letters. The word golf is equal to 4T in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. Happy Gilmore 2 is about mishaps on a golf course. When a golf ball is hit errantly, the word 4 is shouted. 4 hints at the number 4. On the same day that Happy Gilmore 2 will be released, the new Fantastic Four movie will be released. These movies that hint at the number 4 will be released 4 days after Warner's death, which was 4 plus 4 days after Cosby's 44th plus 44th birthday. The iconic scene in the first Happy Gilmore movie, which God has previously used for a prophetic sign, is when Sandler is thrown into a pool of water on the golf course. This parallels with Warner's, as in capital W, the actor's name. This parallels with Warner's death in the ocean 4 days before the movie about golf, which since it's 4, will be released. Okay, so again, just to summarize that, God has used this scene, the fight scene with Bob Barker, in which Bob Barker throws Adam Sandler into a pool of water. That was used in 2023 for a prophetic sign. It's explained in other videos. So there's precedent there. And so that's interesting because we have this connection to another water sign. And it's a death. I mean, Sandler didn't die when he was thrown into the pool of water, but it was violence. And also, this actor named Warner died violently in a riptide in the ocean. So that's a parallel. And the movie, which is about golf, and I just explained how golf hints at the number 4, and it's released on the same day as the Fantastic Four movie, that will be 4 days after the death of Warner in the water. Now, this is relevant in a second, this water parallel here between the two movies. Okay, so these movies, Fantastic Four and Happy Gilmore 2, that point to the number 4, will be released on July 25th, 2025, 7 days before the predicted death of Paul Simon. In God's signs, the number 4 is associated with Paul Simon. By the way, 7 is the 4th prime number. But as I explained in many other videos, Paul Simon is associated with the number 4 in God's signs. This is because of bridge over troubled water, because in God's signs, bridge is the same symbolism as door, and the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the symbol for a door. Okay? Also, Warner died in troubled water. So that's why we have the connection. I'll explain why the 7 days in a minute, but for that matter, it is the 4th prime number of days, and God uses that. So the 4th prime number of days, basically I just forgot to write, I didn't realize this when I was writing the paragraph, okay? We have the movies that symbolize the number 4, the 4th prime number of days before Simon's predicted death. That's enough. But it is also 7 days. Okay, now I'll explain why 7 days is relevant in a second here. But it has to do with troubled water, and Simon is symbolic of 4 because of bridge over troubled water, and Warner, the actor, died in troubled water. A bridge is the same symbolism as a door, and the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is a symbol for a door. Simon is Jewish, by the way, and so is Adam Sandler, by the way. Simon is also symbolic of the number 4 because Simon's death will also point to the first chapter of the book of Amos, in which is repeated the Hebrew idiom for 3 transgressions and for 4, which means the tolerable limit of sin has been reached and that judgment is unavoidable. In other words, Simon's death will be a massive warning of judgment and destruction for America, as in the actor Warner, right? But anyway, Simon's death will be a massive warning of judgment because his death will point to Amos and the judgment, and his death will also point to his death on 8:1 will also point to Revelation 8:1, the period of silence that was observed in heaven. That's why Simon's biggest hit, or first hit was Sound of Silence. And the sound of silence in heaven in Revelation 8:1 is followed by the 7 trumpet judgments. Actually, I just jumped ahead of myself. Okay. So furthermore, Simon is predicted to die on the first day of the 8th month because this will point to the period of silence observed in heaven in Revelation 8:1, which is why his hit Sound of Silence. And the sound of silence in Revelation 8:1 is a warning that precedes the 7 trumpets of God's judgment. This is the reason why the death of Warner in troubled water, which hints at a warning, connects to the predicted death of Simon, whose hit was bridge over troubled water. In the Bible, God gave Noah a 7-day warning to load the ark before the flood judgment began. Warner's death in the ocean due to a rip current, troubled water, is symbolic of flood waters that burst forth violently in the book of Genesis, Genesis chapter 7, but the flood began 7 days after the warning that God gave Noah to load the ark. That's why the 7 days between Simon's predicted death and the movie's release, the release of the movies, which connects to the death of Warner in the violent waters. So the flood waters increased for 40 days. In the Bible, after they began, the flood waters increased for 40 days. The word gulf in simple English gematria is equal to 40. And Simon is predicted to die 7 days, as in the warning, before the 40 days of increased floodwaters, after the release of the movie about golf and the movies that point to the number 4. And golf is equal to 40. Additionally, Simon's death will point to Revelation 8:1, which is a warning that precedes the 7 trumpets of judgment. This too is why the death of Warner connects to a 7-day warning before the predicted death of Simon. Also, Simon's most recent album is 7 Psalms, and he has a hit late in the evening, which is known for its heavy use of trumpets. And so that's it. That's it for this profound explanation for how God has used the Cosby Show as a warning of the loss of wholesome values, family values, to point to the predicted death of Paul Simon, and his death will be the big warning that precedes the judgment, because his death will point to the warning in Revelation 8:1 that preceded the 7 trumpet judgments. All right, there's more to add to this. A friend of mine has discovered this. So the name, Warner, the actor that was the son in the Cosby Show, Malcolm Jamal Warner, he played this character named Al Cowlings in the O.J. Simpson TV series. I'm not familiar with the show, but Al Cowlings, this is amazing. Al Cowlings was became infamous for being the guy in the Bronco truck with O.J. Simpson during the chase. Okay, so Jamal Warner played this character. And O.J. Simpson is a huge deal in God's Signs. I've made videos about this before. I'll repost them again and update them. But this is a serious deal, because ultimately, as my friend discovered here, O.J. Simpson is part of God's Signs, and it points to Barack Obama as the Antichrist. The initials of Al Cowlings hints at AC, Antichrist. AC is short for Antichrist. So Al Cowlings, that's the reason for his name to begin with. And so, anyway, the date that Warner died, this character, the guy that played Al Cowlings, which was about the O.J. Simpson events. The death of the actor Warner on July 21st was 66 weeks and 6 days after the death of O.J. Simpson. Okay, that hints at 666. That's exactly what we're looking for here. Okay, now to confirm what we were talking about here, which is that Al Cowlings is symbolic of AC, Antichrist, because of course in Bible prophecy the number of the Antichrist is 666. Now Warner was born 9 years and 14 days after Barack Obama. G 914 in the concordance, in the Strong's Greek concordance, is the word Barachias, pronounced like this, Barachias. Okay, so it's pronounced Barachias, which is a key, which is huge because that's the symbolism that is involved in these connections. Because again, a key will open the door, and the door is symbolized by the number 4. And again, Warner died 4 days before the release of the movies that will point to the number 4, which is, again, connects to the predicted death of Paul Simon. All right. And again, Warner died 4 plus 4 days, as in the 44th president, after the 88th birthday, as in 44 plus 44, of Bill Cosby. But this identifies Barack Obama as the Antichrist, because this guy Warner played Al Cowlings, who hints at the Antichrist, and that's confirmed with the period of 66 weeks and 6 days after the death of O.J. Simpson, because that's 666, the number of the Antichrist. And now we have more confirmation that this is the case, because we have the word in the concordance, Barakias. Again, also, the word key is hinted at here to confirm this, because Paul Simon was born in 41, and the word key in simple English gematria is equal to 41. And Simon is known for composing music, and music compositions are based on music keys. All right? And of course, bridge over troubled water is the same symbol as the bridge is the same symbolism as door, and the door is opened with a key. So Barakias, Barack Obama. Now, that's amazing. Warner, 9 years, 14 days, G914, okay? Al Cowlings hints at Antichrist. The thing is, too, is that the Antichrist will use AI. It will use the internet and AI technology to enforce the mark of the Antichrist. And that's what's hinted at with Paul Simon through his big hit, You Can Call Me Al. Al hints at AI. So God has used God has used all of these songs by Paul Simon for prophetic signs, for prophetic purposes, including even You Can Call Me Al, which is the first single, the big hit from the album Graceland, which is huge in God's signs. And so the first hit would be important too, you would figure. And that's how it is. It's hinting at the Antichrist and the use of the AI. You can call me Al. But this is confirmed because what we have here is this connection between Al Cowlings, who, as I've just now demonstrated, is symbolic of the Antichrist. We have the connection through this actor Warner to the predicted death of Paul Simon, who wrote and sang, You Can Call Me Al. You Can Call Me AI. Stunning, stunning. And so what needs to be emphasized here is that, yes, we do have all of these fours, the movies that will point to the number 4, the fourth prime number of days from that to the predicted death of Simon, who hints at the number 4 in God's signs, as I've explained. But what has not been emphasized is that it also points to the Antichrist, the identity of the Antichrist, the 44th president. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.